Sweden will give Ukraine 16 Gripen fighter jets and another 22 will be purchased. Along with them, Kyiv will also receive long-range Meteor missiles. They just won't quit in Russia. Once again, they've called on foreign diplomats to leave Kyiv. This time, it was the armchair marshal, Shoigu. Everything's going to plan. They've started placing air defense missile systems on Moscow's skyscrapers. And as for the friendly visit, Putin's motorcade in Kazakhstan was escorted by an armored car with a machine gunner's nest and electronic warfare gear, while the terrified dictator once again couldn't pronounce Tokayev's name. I'll tell you about this and more right now, and I'd like to ask you to give this episode a like. Sweden will provide Ukraine with its first 16 Gripen fighter jets. This was announced by the country's Prime Minister, Ulf Kristersson, at a press conference with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. We are talking about the JS-39 Gripen CD modification. The delivery will take place at the beginning of 2027. Thus, this will strengthen Ukrainian air defense and the aerial protection of Europe. Ukrainian pilots have already flown Gripen fighters and told us it's a very big change, the Swedish Prime Minister added. The President of Ukraine stated that the fighters will help combat Russian-guided aerial bombs, as the planes will be provided with a corresponding set of weaponry. The day before, Zelenskyy arrived in Sweden to discuss a new major defense package for Ukraine with partners. He stated that Ukraine will buy all 150 Gripen fighters from Sweden. Kyiv is counting on financing for this from a 90 billion euro loan. Ukrainian defenders have already identified 500 targets in Belarus for attacks should Lukashenko's army directly enter the war against Ukraine. All the details are in our report.
A new argument for Lukashenko not to get involved in the war against Ukraine. The first 500 military targets in Belarus are already known and identified. If the armed forces see that a new invasion from the north is inevitable, Kyiv will strike first, destroying the offensive potential of what would then be the enemy. This high-profile statement was made by the head of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Magyar Brovdi. At the same time, these remarks coincided with the visit of Belarusian opposition leader Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya to Kyiv. As it turns out, she is also aware of Lukashenko's plans and is ready to help.
On the territory of Belarus, they are building up, let's say, a certain infrastructure that shouldn't be there if the country isn't preparing for an escalation. And we are sharing this information with our partners.
Moreover, the list of 500 targets was clearly not compiled yesterday. According to analysts, they became legitimate targets the moment they started working for Russia. But Ukraine has not responded yet. If not just the Belarusian defense industry, but also the army joins the Russians, a strike will be delivered immediately.
Legitimate targets could quite rightly include the integral plant in the center of Minsk, which creates microchips for all, missiles that are actually arriving, and factories that produce and sell optics for sites, including artillery ones, which are installed there on T-90 and so on, and one could list many more here.
Many targets, analysts believe, were revealed during recent exercises conducted by official Minsk under the auspices of Moscow. Also, more targets were added after the transfer of Russian nuclear weapons to Belarus.
We are observing certain military activity in Belarus. This is confirmed by recent exercises that took place, including with the potential use of nuclear weapons, so-called nuclear deterrence, as they call it in Moscow. And it's clear that especially the nuclear component, especially the possibility of long-range strikes, the location on the territory of Belarus of potentially a larger number of Iskander missiles, these are threats not only for Ukraine.
At the same time, the European military community also realizes the threat from Belarus. There, of course, they don't talk openly about the list of targets, but likely, in case of aggression from Minsk, strikes will fly back at it not only from Ukraine but also from our partners.
It is necessary to understand that in case of strikes from the territory of Belarus or preparation for such strikes, drones will fly back. In response, there will be counterstrikes, including from the defense forces and possibly from NATO forces, including against military targets specifically on the territory of the Republic of Belarus, and this can be avoided.
And it seems that Lukashenko himself wants to avoid involving Belarusians in the war more than anyone. This is understandable. After all, as the military jokes, if that happens, he will become legitimate target number 2 after Putin.
I think he is aware that he doesn't have a bunker deep enough where, as they say, something might not hit something that is already much more effective in 2026 than in 2022.
The military leadership of Belarus also fears a possible Ukrainian response. Not only is the command there basically not inclined to fight against the AFU, which it has repeatedly demonstrated, but also being well versed in military affairs, they clearly understand how this will end for them.
I think that in Belarus, the entire military elite, including the political one, they see perfectly well and know, looking at the examples of how we act towards military targets on the territory of the Russian Federation, what can happen in Belarus. There is an understanding. This has been illustrated and shown more than once.
Consequently, even if Putin still manages to pressure Lukashenko, sabotage among the military should not be ruled out.
Guns and tanks, if necessary, could simply be turned toward Minsk in order to finish what they had previously failed to achieve during the protests that took place back in the year 2020.
The Russian spring offensive is gradually losing its intensity, and in some areas the occupying forces are being forced to retreat under pressure from Ukraine's defense forces. The armed forces of Ukraine are noting a decrease in the effectiveness of attacks despite their high frequency. The most noticeable changes are being observed in the Liman, Kupiansk and Veliki Burluk directions. Ukraine has launched a successful campaign of drone strikes against Russian logistics on the front line and at medium distances, which limits Russia's ability to transport personnel to the front, as well as to supply and maintain positions on the front. This could significantly reduce the impact of a new mobilization in the Russian Federation if, of course, the Kremlin decides to announce one. This is discussed in a new report from the Institute for the Study of War. The occupiers are already complaining that drone detectors don't stop working even at a depth of 150 kilometers from the front line. They say it wasn't like this before. Well then, congratulations on your realization.
Yeah, this used to be the safest road here. It just won't stop signaling at all, no matter what I do.
In Russia, foreign diplomats have once again been urged to leave Kyiv. This time it was done by the Secretary of the Russian Security Council, Shoigu. He also added that the Russian Federation could strike at any moment. Will Russia actually commit such a crime?
Instead of peace and negotiations with Ukraine, the Kremlin chooses nuclear blackmail and a new round of escalation.
Loudly so that they can hear it. A triple hurrah. 3. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah.
The target audience for this nuclear saber-rattling is the West. The Speaker of the Russian State Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin, has taken to directly threatening Elon Musk with the destruction of human civilization.
Elon Musk himself must understand that his satellites are being used to kill children. His respectable and upstanding image is in no way, absolutely none at all, consistent with what is actually happening right now. All of this could very well lead to us making the choice to use a weapon so powerful that it would leave no trace of anyone behind, erasing every bit of evidence of their existence.
In addition to Volodin's words and Medvedev's angry posts, the Russian authorities are trying to back up their threats with actions. Nuclear exercises in Belarus, as well as the third launch of the Oreshnik at Ukraine, are links in a single propaganda chain that the authors intend for the West to believe.
Whenever Russia decides to use the Oreshnik missile, it is essentially sending a message to the world. You see, just imagine for a moment what could potentially happen if the Oreshnik were ever used in combination with nuclear weapons. This is a scenario that raises serious concerns for everyone.
Meanwhile, Russia's foreign ministry is urging diplomats to evacuate Kyiv. Lavrov repeats the same in a private conversation with Marco Rubio. Moscow relies on past experience when the US fell for Russian threats. For example, regarding Musk, the Kremlin remembers the billionaire once disabled Starlink during Ukrainian attacks on occupied Crimea.
Putin is trying to influence the so-called Western mentality. We're discussing with partners that we shouldn't give in to Russian blackmail. The world's reaction must be proportionate, which means more aid packages and more sanctions. Putin must understand that he will achieve nothing through military means.
But the Kremlin elders are overlooking one crucial factor. For 5 years, Ukraine has shown the world in practice. There's no need to fear Putin's nuclear club. You can blow up FSB headquarters, burn major refineries, sink fleets, and destroy strategic aircraft, and the sky won't fall.
The intimidation strategy, it only works for the first month. And this applies to the local population in any country at war. This also applies to the allies of the country at war. It's a known fact because war becomes routine by the 5th year.
Military experts and analysts insist on one more important detail. Before using nuclear weapons, the Kremlin would need nuclear tests with a real bomb blast, not that theater of launching more dummies in Belarus.
Requesting your permission.
Please proceed according to the plan you've developed.
Yes, sir. To the Division Commander, target 10001, Readiness 1.
The main result of Russia's nuclear blackmail is its total devaluation. The old man wants to scare everyone with his nuclear club, but the world no longer falls for the Russian Führer's lies.
Russians are preparing to repel retaliatory strikes on Moscow after their threats to destroy Kyiv. Air defense systems have begun to be placed on Moscow's skyscrapers. For instance, a video spread on social media yesterday showing the delivery of a Pantsir SMD system to the top of a high-rise by an Mi-26 transport helicopter. This image demonstrates how deeply the Ukrainian drone campaign has changed the security system in the capital of Russia itself. The air defense system was installed on the roof of the Nord Star Tower Business Center, located in Moscow's northern district on Begovaya Street. Nearby are Kyiv facilities which stand right next to residential buildings, schools, and kindergartens. A gasoline crisis is growing in Russia's regions. Due to strikes on refineries, production has dropped sharply, and a shortage has emerged. For example, in occupied Crimea, after Ukrainian attacks, people are already planning to switch to bicycles.
Sevastopol, the gasoline situation. I think we'll soon be fueling up with what? With nothing, it's all zeros. Damn, hard to see. I'll pull up from the other side. What to drive? Nothing to drive. Soon we'll be riding bicycles. Gas is all at zero. Damn, why is it blinking like that? Anyway, that's it. We're switching. I guess we're probably switching to bicycles for sure. Well, we'll see. See that? That's it for a healthy lifestyle. Onto the bikes. There's no fuel.
And this situation is not only in the occupied territories, but already in the central regions of Russia. Here's what it looks like, for example, in Tver.
Hello, everyone. People are stocking up in the Tver region. There's no gas, only 100 octane and diesel. Five minutes ago, there was only 92. The pumps are closing. This is Rosneft.
Russia will pay itself for the construction of the first nuclear power plant in Kazakhstan. The construction by Rosatom of the first nuclear power plant in Kazakhstan, which President Putin agreed on during his visit to Astana, will be carried out with Russian money. The cost of the station, which is expected to start operating in the mid-30s, is estimated at almost $16.5 billion. And this is how Putin arrived in Astana. An armored vehicle with a machine gunner's seat, an electronic warfare vehicle, and even a cover helicopter were spotted in the motorcade. Against this backdrop, Putin and Kassym-Jomart Tokayev signed a statement on the 7 foundations of friendship and good neighborliness between the peoples of Russia and Kazakhstan. Putin, as per tradition, was unable to pronounce the name of the president of Kazakhstan, who, in turn, stated that no global problem can be solved without Russia's participation. Well, it's quite logical. No Russia, no global problems. Japan is urgently strengthening its defense. The Russian Federation has sharply increased military activity in the region. Tokyo fears a second front due to Russia's military activity. Japan is concerned about the growth of military activity, and this concern is only growing. For what purpose Putin is escalating the situation in the Far East, we will tell you in detail next. In the meantime, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the channel.
Japan is alarmed by the increasing military presence of Russia in the region. We are talking about the island of Hokkaido, where Russia has recently become more active. Analysts emphasize that Russia is actively turning the Sea of Okhotsk, which is located north of Hokkaido, into a sanctuary for its nuclear submarines.
Realizing that the threat of escalation on the borders with NATO, namely the possibility of an invasion of the Baltic countries, met with a decisive rebuff from European partners and the United States, the Russian Federation and the Russian dictator decided to escalate tensions in the Pacific Basin, thus trying to create another zone of military-political tension. That is, it is nothing more than a political bluff by the Russian side.
Russia also deployed Su-35 fighters and anti-ship missiles in what Tokyo calls the Northern Territories. These are the 4 disputed islands off the northeastern coast of Hokkaido, which Russia administers as the Southern Kuril Islands.
I'll remind you, after these unfriendly actions by the Russian Federation toward Japan, the United States redeployed its nuclear submarine fleet directly to the shores of the Russian Federation, which was a more than tough and unambiguous response from the United States to the possibility of escalating military tension in this region of the globe.
The aggressor country has expanded its nuclear submarine base on the Kamchatka Peninsula, and it seems intends to create a Pacific Fleet branch of its main Directorate of Deep Sea Research, a unit responsible for special underwater operations. In this situation, Russia has two spheres of interest. First, distracting the United States from the war in Ukraine.
This is an element of military political pressure on the United States and accordingly Japan, with the aim of influencing Ukraine regarding territorial concessions in the Donbas. In other words, this is Putin's favorite tactic, raising the stakes.
The islands are also a means of influencing Russia's ally China. Japan and China claim sovereignty over the Diaoyu Islands in the East China Sea, which are currently operated by Tokyo. However, China has regularly deployed heavily armed vessels in this area, raising concerns about the risk of confrontation and military escalation.
And that is precisely the main strategic task of the Russian Federation, to try to use this factor for political pressure on the United States. But the position of the United States is very pragmatic. This was demonstrated precisely when the possibility of a Russian invasion of both Poland and the Baltic states was being considered. And a similar reaction from the United States will occur in the event of escalating tension around Japan.
At the moment, Japan plans to deploy long-range missiles on the island base. They want to use these systems for a counterstrike against other countries' bases in the event of an attack on Japan.